Okay guys, so what we're using today, we have the dynamic black with the fake skin. It does not take much. So instead of making all 6 or 7 of your cups with all different tones of blacks and grays, it only takes a couple. So I try to use the regular black for my darkest blacks. Sometimes I use the triple black, but like I said, it's fake skin. It does not heal. So your black is going to look black no matter what. Then I use dynamic gray wash, and I think I use 60 and 20. So 60 is all of my mid-tones, and 20 is all of my light tones, and black is all of my dark tones. Like I said, it's fake skin. It does not heal. So I find that using these three simplifies the process, and I'm able to achieve every tone that I'm looking to achieve on fake skin. So if it was human skin, I might use the whole lineup. But this is fake skin. It does not heal. It just takes the three to simplify the process. So that's what I'm using for my gray washes. For the colors, I found a set of inks called Power Grays by Intense. I am not sponsored by Dynamic or Intense. I just like their inks. Now, I had to shoot that out there. I know everyone always says it. And it's like, we know you're not sponsored. You probably should not be sponsored. You're not that good. Whatever, I'm just kidding. But the reason I'm telling you this is because I'm going to speak a lot on the Power Gray set today, just because that's kind of what I wanted to share with you guys. So here is the light tone of gray. Now I'm using this with my gray washes along with another few tones of grays to achieve a realistic rose. Now, why am I using these actual grays instead of just the gray wash? Now, I saw another artist on YouTube who does all their work with these gray tones, and they do not use gray wash at all. And it had a really, really nice, realistic look to it that kind of attracted me to go check out some gray inks. And I found this Power Gray set by Intense, and I ordered it. And I got it, and I started messing around with it, right? At first, I wasn't too sure. I didn't really know how to use it. And then once I found out how to use it, and I learned a couple tricks, it really, really added the realistic piece to my artwork. Like it just made it that much more real. It's an actual gray tone. So it's easy to know where to put it and where not to put it. And I actually use it along with my gray washes still. So I'm using my watered down blacks and I'm using my gray tones, and together I'm making really realistic looking pieces. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys. So moving forward, I have my black ink, my 60% gray wash, which is black watered down, my 20% gray wash, which is same thing, black watered down. I have my light tone of gray and then my mid tone of gray. Now, that's all I need for the fake skin to achieve every tone that I need, because like I said before, it does not heal. So what you get is what you're stuck with. So you want to build that up nice and slow. Working on fake skin, using a lower voltage, I find is key. A lot of people use high voltages to really pack it in there because it's kind of tough and you want to get it in fast and you're in a hurry. I take my time with my fake skins. I treat it as if it was a client that was paying me for my artwork. And the reason is, people are still going to see it. It's your fake skin. It's going on YouTube. It's going on Instagram. Whatever. People are going to see it. And if it looks rushed, you never know if that's going to make a client say, I might not want a tattoo by this guy. So just treat the fake skins like regular skin and give it your best shot. With me, I go slow and I give it my best shot. And it may take me a couple days because I might stop. I might not have that much time in a day to tattoo the fake skin. I might stop. So whatever, it takes me a couple of days and then I get it finished and it was worth it. And it makes it fun. So take your time, use a lower voltage and build up those tones and those layers. So I started off kind of giving an edge to the tattoo. So I went with my 60% and my 7 bug pin mag on about 6 volts with the CNC Q2. The CNC Q2 is a German Fallhyber rotary style machine. It's on the cheaper side. It was one of the first machines I ever owned. So I like to bust it out every now and then and use it for old time's sakes when I'm tattooing fake skin. It actually is a very reliable machine for $180. I will say that. Now, I took my 60% and I gave the tattoo a nice background if you will. I locked in my perimeter with the 60%, did some smooth shading, dark to light, using only one tone, just to kind of give me a, what's the word, if you will, a nice foundation to start picking off little parts of the tattoo. So after I did that, I took my reference and angled it exactly the way I was seeing the stencil, and I started picking away leaves. So when it comes time to use your gray inks, do you use your grays before your blacks or your blacks before your grays? Now, a lot of people are going to say to use your dark tones before your light tones. And yes, this is what you will do in most cases. Now, I find when you're tattooing a realistic piece, sometimes you're going to not be sure. And what do you do when you're not sure? You build it up. Slowly, you layer it up until it looks just right. That way you have some forgiveness. If you just go packing a bunch of dark, you're going to regret it. You might have put too much, and there's no going back once you put too much. Can't erase it. There's no eraser here. So what I do is sometimes I'll take my light gray, not my gray wash, my light gray tone, and I'll start working that in and seeing how it's looking, seeing what kind of effects I'm getting. If I'm trying to make a leaf look like it's curled, am I starting to achieve that with my lightest tone of gray, or am I not? And I kind of go from there. And once I start to put in the tones where I want them, I'll start going a little darker. I might dip into my dark tone of gray, not gray wash, of gray, and add some of the darker shades. Now, after I finish that, that's when I'll dip into my 60% and kind of start adding in all the depth, the darkest places. So if I'm not sure, that's how I'm going to go about it right there. I'm going to add in the lightest tones and go to the darkest tones. This way you have some forgiveness. Now, if you can, if you're positive, if you know where that ink needs to go and you're going to do it one pass, minimal damage to the skin, that's great. Go dark to light, because that's how you're supposed to do it. You don't want to muddy up your colors here. But it's not going to hurt to build it up from lightest to dark. It's a little unethical, but if you use it in the sense I'm trying to tell you, it works out just fine. Because that way you have some, like I said, some forgiveness, some fallback. You didn't put, if you mess up a little bit, it's like, okay, well, that was the light tone, so that can be there. It's my lightest tone. When you add the highlights, you can shape it up a little better, and you can save yourself. Once you put too dark, there's no saving yourself. So with the realistic rose, the object here is not to really outline it with bold lines. If you outline it with bold lines, you're going to be left with a more traditional, kind of neo-traditional style looking rose, which, don't get me wrong, it might look good if you do it right, but it's not going to be a realistic rose. So if you have a client coming in asking specifically for a realistic rose, you do not want to bust out the outliner here, guys. For this tattoo, I busted out a 3 round liner tight, a 7 bug pin mag, and a 13 bug pin curved mag. This is how I will do the whole tattoo. I do most of the tattoo with the 7 mag. Just trying to create edges, right? We don't need lines here, we're creating edges. So on the bigger petals where you can create a nice edge, I put in the shades and I create that edge, which gives it a realistic look. Now moving more towards the inner side of the tattoo, that's when I'm going to go ahead and bust out that 3 round liner, and I'm going to start putting a little bit of lines, because you have to have some lines. That's where people make the big mistake. They try and make a realistic rose. They know that you don't need lines, you need edges, and they overdo it and they make the whole tattoo, and it looks really, really nice when it's done. And then when you see it a year later and it's healed, you kind of can't tell where some of the leaves meet and stuff like that, because the ink spreads over time. And if you just don't have that line there, you kind of lose some of the definition. So coming in on some of them tight corners on the inside of the rose, I bust out the 3 round liner and I go ahead and put some lines in. That's for longevity. So now doing this, it's going to make your tattoo last. It takes away from the realistic part just a tad, but if you know how to combat that, you're going to have a good tattoo that's going to look realistic. It's going to look like it has no lines for years. And what you want to do is, once you get in on the tighter spaces of the rose, you take that 3RL and you bust out some lines. Now, once you finish that and you come in and you shade off of them and turn that line into an edge. So essentially, you still have no lines if you do it right, but you did put that line in to keep a crisp edge for years. So keep that in mind when you're doing realistic roses. So right here is where we take the 3-round liner and we start popping some shading in there. I still do some stippling, if you will, in my realistic roses. Now, I try to keep away from having the real dot-like look in my stippling. I do it a little smoother, if you will. So here I have my 3-round liner, and I'm flipping it back and forth. But my voltage is at about 8 volts. So where most people would be doing about 4 to 5 volts to get that dotty effect, we're staying away from that because this is a realistic rose. You don't want dots. You need smooth shades. So I got my 3-round liner here, and I it's 60% gray wash. And we're just flipping some shading in there. Real easy to do. Once you get your confidence with this, it's a great technique because you can just lay that shading in. Couple passes, one if you will, if you really want to. Like I said, I like forgiveness, so I like to build it up a little bit, but it becomes to be a great tool for shading. So I got the 3-round liner here, putting in some solid blacks in the corners of the leaves, and then I'm adding my 60% on the shading on the leaves. I'm trying to match my reference as good as I can. Basically, when you're tattooing a realistic rose, you're doing a portrait. Whether you know it or not, it might not be a human face, but you're tattooing a portrait because you're trying to tattoo exactly what you see. So in order to do that, basically, you want to build it up in layers. Once you get really, really, really good at it and you start knowing what shade's what and where it's going to go, sure, you can just slam it in there real quick on a high voltage in one pass. And that's the beauty of it, because once you get good at it, you get faster at it. But for now, if you're a beginner, build it up from light to dark. Don't overwork the skin, but build it up. All right. So, easing on in, we've got a couple outside petals done. We're getting a little closer to the middle. And before my stencil starts to get any type of smeared in the middle, we're going to go ahead and pop these lines I was talking about. Now, this is a 3-round liner tight. We're running it on 7 volts. And we're just slowly putting these lines in. And another thing that is very important. These lines that I'm putting in, I did not use black. I used the 60% gray wash. Like I said, we're going to shade off of these lines or into these lines later in the tattoo. And if you just pop these lines in here with solid black and then you're shading off of them with 60 to 40% gray wash later, well, when the tattoo heals, you're going to see those lines. We don't want to see the lines, guys. It's a realistic rose. We want to shade off of those lines and have it kind of all blend together and be an edge. You do not want lines in a realistic rose. I can't stress this enough, guys. But, like I said, popping these lines in here with the 3-round liner and 60% gray wash is going to help it long term. So you're going to have a realistic rose that's going to hold up over time. It's a win-win. So that's how we're finishing up today's session on the fake skin. We're just popping some lines in. That way I can give it a good wipe down. Come back when I finish off part 2, which is going to be a video for that. We're going to finish off the rose. And I'm going to really, really go into depth in that video on these great inks and how we use them. And the biggest trick and tip I have about the inks. As you can see, what we've done in the first session is looking great. Looking nice and realistic like we're wanting it to. So that's all for today. And if you really like the video, it helps the channel. Hit that thumbs up button. And I'll see you guys on part 2. Peace.